Have you ever pondered about the mysteries of the human brain? This intricate organ, a maze of billions of neurons, is the powerhouse of all our thoughts, emotions, and actions. But did you know there's a final frontier in its development, a region that matures only after all others? This last piece of the puzzle has a profound significance in making us who we are. Intriguing, isn't it? Take a moment to ponder, which part of the brain develops last and why? To understand this, we'll first embark on a journey through the brain's development. Our journey begins at the moment of conception, where the brain starts as a tiny cluster of cells. From these humble beginnings, the neural tube, the precursor to the brain and spinal cord, forms. By the end of the first month, this tube has already started to fold and curve into the basic structure of the brain. Fast forward to the second trimester, and the brain structure becomes more complex. The cerebral cortex, responsible for our thoughts and actions, begins to grow. It's a period of rapid growth and expansion, creating the ridges and folds that give the brain its characteristic appearance. As we move into the third trimester and the early years of life, the brain's development continues at a breakneck pace. The neurons are wiring together, forming the vast network of connections that underpin our abilities to think, learn, and remember. During childhood, the brain continues to refine and reorganize these connections. This process, known as synaptic pruning, helps the brain become more efficient, allowing us to develop more complex cognitive abilities. As we enter adolescence, the brain undergoes another significant transformation. The prefrontal cortex, the area of the brain responsible for decision-making, impulse control, and emotional regulation, begins to mature. It's a slow process. Throughout this journey, each part of the brain develops at its own pace, influenced by a combination of genetics and environment. Some parts, like the sensory and motor areas, develop early, laying the groundwork for our basic abilities to perceive and interact with the world. Others, like the prefrontal cortex, take longer to mature, reflecting the complexity of their functions. So we see that the brain's development is a complex and fascinating process. But what's the last part to develop? The last part to develop is the prefrontal cortex. No, this isn't a district in a sci-fi city or a secret sector in a video game. It's a vital part of our brain, nestled right behind our forehead. The prefrontal cortex is like the CEO of our brain. It's where all the executive functions take place. It's responsible for managing time, paying attention, switching focus, planning and organizing, remembering details, curbing inappropriate speech or behavior, integrating past experience with present action. When we're deciding whether to hit the snooze button or get up and exercise, that's the prefrontal cortex in action. When we're deciding whether to have that extra slice of pizza or stick to our diet, that's the prefrontal cortex making the call. But why does it develop last? The prefrontal cortex is a complex piece of machinery. It's like the crown jewel of the brain. Crafting this jewel takes time, precision, and a lot of resources. The brain develops in a back-to-front pattern, and the prefrontal cortex is at the very front. This part of the brain is responsible for our decision-making, judgment, and problem-solving abilities. It's our internal compass, guiding us through life's many challenges and opportunities. It helps us navigate social situations, understand consequences, and make informed decisions. It's like the captain of a ship, steering us through the stormy seas of life. And it's not just about decision-making. The prefrontal cortex is also crucial for our personality expression, decision-making, and moderating social behavior. It's the part of our brain that makes us who we are, shaping our character, and defining our personality. Yet this all-important part of our brain isn't fully developed until our mid to late 20s. That's why teenagers are often impulsive, risk-taking, and prone to emotional outbursts. Their prefrontal cortex is still under construction. This region is the brain's command center, making it crucial for our survival and success. So next time you're faced with a difficult decision, remember to thank your prefrontal cortex. It's the unsung hero of our brain, working tirelessly behind the scenes to keep us on the right path. But why does the prefrontal cortex develop last, you might be wondering? The answer lies in our evolutionary history and the unique advantages this late development provides. From an evolutionary perspective, the human brain has evolved to prioritize survival. This means that areas responsible for basic life functions, like the brainstem and the limbic system, which control things like heart rate, breathing, and basic emotions, develop first. These are the functions that we need immediately after birth. However, the prefrontal cortex, which governs complex cognitive behaviors, decision-making, and social interactions, develops last. This region of our brain is like the CEO of a company, overseeing everything and making the big decisions. But just like a good CEO, it needs time to develop, to gather experience and information. So why is this late development advantageous for humans? Well, the delay in the development of the prefrontal cortex allows us to adapt to the environment we're born into. It enables us to learn and internalize the complex behaviors and social norms that are unique to our culture and our time. Imagine if our prefrontal cortex was fully developed at birth. We'd be born with a rigid set of behaviors, unable to adapt to the changing world around us. But because it develops over time, we can learn, grow, and change. In essence, we're not just products of our genes. We're also products of our environment. Our experiences, our interactions, the lessons we learn all shape the development of our prefrontal cortex. It's like a piece of clay being molded over time, taking the shape of the world around it. This flexibility, this ability to adapt, is one of the things that make humans, well, human. So the late development of the prefrontal cortex is essential for our adaptability. It's what allows us to navigate the complex, ever-changing world we live in, making us the intelligent social beings we are today. Now, you might wonder, when does the prefrontal cortex fully develop? Well, brace yourself for a fascinating fact. The prefrontal cortex, the final frontier in our brain's development, doesn't reach full maturity until about the age of 25. Yes, you heard it right, 25. So for those of you who might have thought that the brain stops developing after adolescence, consider this a revelation. The prefrontal cortex's late bloom is more than just an intriguing piece of trivia. It has real implications for how we understand behaviors and decision-making in adolescents and young adults. This region of the brain, you see, is responsible for a multitude of complex cognitive tasks. It's the command center for things like planning, problem-solving, impulse control, and managing emotions. So what does this mean for teenagers and young adults? Well, their prefrontal cortex is still under construction. So, we've journeyed through the fascinating process of brain development. Let's take a quick stroll down memory lane, shall we? We embarked on this journey witnessing the incredible evolution of the brain, from its inception to its full development. We marveled at the complex dance of neurons, synapses, and chemicals that shape our cognition and behavior. Our journey led us to the last piece of the puzzle, the prefrontal cortex. This late bloomer, situated in the anterior part of the brain, is responsible for a multitude of our cognitive functions. It's the control center, if you will, governing our decision-making, personality expression, and moderating our social behavior. And why does it develop last? Well, it's a matter of evolutionary design. The prefrontal cortex is the crowning achievement of the brain's development, the culmination of all that growth and change. It's the part of the brain that makes us uniquely human, enabling us to plan, think abstractly, and understand complex concepts. Its late development is a testament to its complexity and importance. It continues to mature into our mid-20s, allowing us to grow, learn, and adapt to the complexities of the world around us. The brain, with its late-blooming prefrontal cortex, truly is a marvel of nature, don't you think?